Hey guys, it's Sully. I'm just trying to get Arabia on my live. So let's see if she can join with that link. Hey everyone. So today is, how do I get it to, if anybody knows in the comments, can you tell me how to get somebody that's not, has 1,000 followers to, if your friends are live, invite them to go live together. Okay. Invite. I think I got it, Arabia. Oh, I can't invite you. What? It says offline. Okay. Let's see. I don't know why I can't invite you. Okay, guys. Why can I not? How do I get... Christy, maybe you know. How do I get Arabia to join me? Even though she doesn't have followings. Moderators. Okay. Manage. Okay, I have all your stuff turned on. So I don't know why. Can you go look at your settings, Arabia, and see if you can... Oh, hold on, you're flashing. What does this mean? Yay! Okay, let her get logged on. Everybody say hi to Marcus. I'm gonna go put him back in his cage. I literally just caught this little guy. He's been running around my front garage, so I just caught him. I'm going to go put him back in the cage. So this is Arabia. She has also been following the Darlie Routier case for quite a while now, and she does have an opposing opinion than I do, although she is against the death penalty for her own, moral reasons. And so do you just want to give a quick invitation while I finish getting set up and put Marcus back in his cage, Arabia?
Okay, can you hear me?
I can. Yes, we can hear you. Yes.
Okay. It won't let me turn the camera on because I don't have enough followers to be live.
Which everyone go follow her so she can start doing live. So everyone here go follow her, okay?
But yes, I am a person who believes that Darlie is absolutely guilty. I am solid in supporting her conviction, but I do not believe in the death penalty. So, um, me and Sully just kind of thought it would be interesting to maybe do a live and create a space for people of opposing opinions to have actual dialogue about the case instead of TikTok comments where it's more like a debate. TikTok is so limited in what you can say in comments. I think a lot of people are just kind of straight to the point, and that can be misconstrued as, somebody being rude or, whatever. And I don't know. I gave Sully the idea to create the space to talk about the case with people who have opposing opinions, and she agreed. So
Yeah,
that's what we're doing.
absolutely. I think that it's important for us to be able to discuss true crime cases, whether it's the Darlie case. But there's so many convoluted points about the Darlie case. Like, some people might think that she is guilty, but don't believe in the death penalty, and so you don't want to see her you don't want to see her be executed, because you don't believe in, do you want to kind of give us a background as to why you don't believe in the death penalty?
I had a family member myself who was sentenced to death when he was 18 years old. Um, and he spent 27 years on death row. And, it wasn't even his case that kind of turned me against the death penalty. It was that, when I became familiar of how many people were not only exonerated, but how many people under the law of party and principle had been sentenced to death who had never actually taken a life. Um,
So can you explain what party and principle means?
okay, so it's basically like if you and I commit a robbery and you decide to shoot everybody in the store that we commit this robbery in, I go to death row with you.
Right.
Whether I had a weapon, whether I killed anyone, whether I knew that, and the commissionary crime of robbery opens up, the legalities of a lot of states to be able to do that. And say you kill 3 people and they charge it as a capital crime, anybody who is charged in that crime with you is going to death row with you. And so when I realized how many people are on death row because of the law of party and principle, that's kind of when I was like, oh, I thought just people like Ted Bundy got executed.
Right. And
I had to educate myself about what capital punishment was. I also do not believe that you can commit the same crime in 2 different places and be eligible for parole in one state and you get executed in another.
right.
So there's reasons like that. It's not so much that it's not that I don't believe in an eye for an eye per se. It's, be fair. And there's just no way possible to make sure that every person sentenced to death is absolutely guilty.
Exactly. And actually, I learned about the party in principle when I studied. They're called, I think, the Texas Six men that escaped from prison in Texas that were all on death row, and they made it all the way up to Colorado. But when each one of them told their stories, it was like you said, one of them was they had gone in to commit a bank robbery. They had agreed that they weren't going to take weapons, nobody was going to be injured in the robbery, and somebody ended up being unalived, and therefore he was put on death row. So that's when I learned about the party and principle rule. And it happens a lot in capital cases, and a capital case just means that you can be put on death row for it. And normally they're in circumstances where a child is involved, or somebody that's, disabled, elderly, police. It's like circumstantial.
Yeah, capital punishment is more than just a death sentence. There are a lot of laws, a lot of legalities, a lot of vast differences. Uh, you know, I mean, the history of this country in itself, there's a disproportionate, minority of people on death row who commit actually the least amount of crimes. So there are a number of reasons I do not support capital punishment. It has nothing to do with, oh my God, what if it was you or your family, or what if someone killed your kids? There's more to capital punishment and supporting capital punishment than just that part of it.
Right.
And for that reason, I do not support capital punishment. So even though I believe Darlie is guilty, I'm pretty solid in that. I've been solid in that for many, many years. I will never be on the side of advocating for her execution.
Okay. See, and so that's a very interesting stance. So, because a lot of people that do not support her, want to see her execution carried out, and that's their opinion. But why don't we go ahead and jump into the case? So, just like me and Danelle are kind of doing on Sundays, and some of our fans have asked if Danelle's going to join us tonight. Me and Arabia are going to talk about some things and anything that's carried over or that we have questions about. I've got my computer up. So if we have questions that Danelle can answer for us tomorrow or fill in the blanks, then I'm going to do a live tomorrow around the same time with Danelle. So she'll be on with me tomorrow, and we're going to do about 90 minutes because we both have families. We both have stuff to do. You could talk about this case all night, but we're going to do not go past 90 minutes. So,
yeah, Sully has had me down the rabbit hole for several days.
We've been sending so many documents.
This is one of those cases that, because I'm usually on the flip side of situations like this. Like, I have a legal studies degree, and so I'm usually on the side of the claims of innocence. And I've never had a personal interest in this case because I do believe she's guilty. Right. But over the years, I have come across different things with her case. Like it's never really died out. It's always been out there. Somebody has always been talking about it at some point, at some time. So even though never took a personal interest in her case, I did stay up to par with, a lot of different things that were going on in her case, just because, the algorithm of the internet itself just puts you in circles of people who, are mutual to you, who are mutual to this person, to that person, to that person. And that's how I came across Danelle on the internet. Just honestly, I literally just stumbled across Danelle.
Well, that's
And but
a
you
lot
know,
of people to see Danelle's content or any content
oh
and
yeah,
take an interest in the case so that they can form their own opinion. You know what I mean?
yes.
Hey guys. I know everybody's saying hey to each other, and we have a good group of people in here today. I've got a lot of fans in here that love true crime. Lots of people that study the Darlie case, of course. On my chat, I'm going to have more people because more people that believe she's innocent follow me than don't. So we might be a little biased here. So
And that's okay. Like,
fine.
I get it. But
Yeah.
I just think that even though there's so many different opinions, I think there needs to be a space where people can actually talk in dialogue. This does not have to be a prove you wrong debate.
No,
You
because
know,
who at the end of the day, and we're gonna get into the Innocence Project and Vanessa, it's their job to figure it out. Like I can't really do anything as a civilian sitting here
right.
behind my
And
computer.
there's just no reason for people to be that emotionally charged over, for one, someone that you don't know. And I
Attacking
see hate
people
on
that
both sides, and it's just not.
like Danelle. I mean, people treat Danelle as if she was, Darlie, if that she committed a crime.
And Danelle has done no wrong. There is nothing wrong about her loving and supporting her sister. That is not a crime. Um, I stood by my loved one the whole 27 years he was on death row, and I'm going to be there till the end, no matter what that end is.
And that's what I've said.
Um,
People have asked me, what happens when Darlie's found guilty? Well, you know what? Then I will support her family through that.
exactly, because you can separate her loved ones from whatever your opinions are about her.
And that's the way it should be. Well, why don't we go ahead and we have some things we want to talk about here. Hold on. My list. Okay, sorry. Maybe you couldn't hear me. I was saying I'm looking at the list of content and the pictures that we had pulled. While I do that, why don't you go ahead and lead us into the crime Arabia? Why don't you go ahead and just start us like 2 a.m. that morning where Darlie and Darren are going upstairs. And we might backtrack a little bit, but basically that's kind of the start of the crime. So why don't you lead us in? Everybody kind of knows my theories. If people have followed my channel, people know what I think. But tell us what you happened that night and just kind of start at the 2 a.m., 2:30-ish a.m. timeline.
Well, quite obviously, somebody butchered two children to death. But as I said, I do believe it was Darlie. But um, I mean, she says she woke up, someone was leaving her home or walking through her home, dropped a knife, and then, um, she heard a glass break. Her husband came running downstairs, and from there, that's where we get the 911 call. So the timeline of what is known to anybody uh, is basically from the start of the 911 call.
Right.
So
Which starts at 2:31, I believe is the exact time. And
yeah,
it
I don't have the
lasts,
exact time, but yeah.
yeah, it lasts, I think the call lasts 5.5 minutes. And you can obviously go pull it up on YouTube. We reenacted the call actually because hearing the call and everything that goes in is can be hard, and there's so many dispatchers talking to police, talking to 911, that there's a lot of background chatter, and they did try and clean up that video for the trial, but we reenacted it and took out a lot of the background dispatch. So in our first episode on Kitchen Table Research podcast, which you can find anywhere, if you go listen to our first, you can hear it without all that background chatter. But the first thing that happens is when the call comes into 911, the dispatcher dispatches the call as an unknown medical emergency. And since
Yeah,
you're
so when a lot of people,
take over, yeah.
I don't know how many people actually know the case, how many people have
I think if people are on my page,
understand the
they
case,
know it.
but
That's
the call was dispatched as an unknown medical emergency. So the officer that first arrived on the scene, first of all, did not know that two children had been brutally stabbed. That is something false that is out there, that, you know, he should have did this, he should have done that. He was not expecting to arrive on a scene where two children had just been basically butchered.
And honestly, if I was
Also, there's an intruder in the house. So he has one hand on the gun where he confronts Darren trying to come out to get the neighbor, the nurse across the street, and he has a flashlight. From the time he is, you know, also him giving CPR, I know that that's a big thing, is he should have helped the child. Well, what if there was an intruder in the house? What if he disarmed himself and he was bent down over that child and an intruder picked up his gun and shot and killed everybody? You know, that
or if
don't
Darlie's guilty, would have you know, they don't know.
exactly. So a lot
We're
of
getting
people
warnings
don't
that we
see
need to
that
watch
in the
our
context it actually happened in real life in.
Hey,
And
Arabia,
officers
really
are
fast.
trained
We
in a
need to watch
situation
what
like
we're
that.
saying because it's flagging us for community guidelines. So just be careful about what you say and the way
What
you
am I
say it.
saying wrong? Tell me so I don't say it.
I know it's you have to so community guidelines and saying instead of saying like MURDER or
Oh, got you. Okay. So
look
yeah, so the officer, if it would have been a situation where there was not an intruder in the home as was thought, he would, yes, he could have very well have administered some type of medical aid to the child. However, both his hands were full. He has and even though he's not actively running through the house looking for a suspect, officers are also trained to wait for backup, because just because you know what was used in that particular case doesn't mean he didn't have a you know what,
right.
the intruder, you know. So
Bang bang.
and from the time the officer got there until the second officer arrived was a matter of minutes. We're not talking about 30 minutes.
Right.
We are talking like single digit
Literally,
number of minutes.
EMT actually Waddell is either following EMT or vice versa into the neighborhood, but EMT has to sit in the ambulance
They
and
have
wait
to wait
for
until the police
Waddell
clear the
because
scene. One
Waddell is
officer could not clear the scene
and that's
by
just
himself.
that is
Like, we had a case here where a house caught on fire. The EMS could not go in and get the lady out of the house until the fire department arrived. Like, that's not something that was individual to just this particular case. That is across the board how first responders are trained.
And if I was an EMT and like I'm a last responder, I'm not a first responder, I'm a last responder, I'm a mortician. So I only show up after all of this stuff has been done. But I do know, you know, maybe more than the average person. If I had gotten an unknown medical emergency call at 2:30 in the morning to this really nice suburban neighborhood, I think some guy had a heart
He
attack.
probably thought he was walking into a heart attack.
That's exactly what I'm saying. You know, somebody got up and broke their hip and fell in the middle of the night.
And not only that, but and I'm not defending the officer. I am not saying that they could not have done things differently.
Right.
I'm not even saying that there wasn't some slop involved in the actual. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that I don't think a lot of people put this in its proper context. We're talking a single digit number of minutes. An officer has a gun in one hand, a flashlight in another. He thinks there's an intruder in the house. He does not want to leave the doorway for anyone else to run in or for somebody to run out. And there are two children that are passing away in front of him.
Yeah.
you
Right.
know. And so, did he make some mistakes? Yeah, but could he have wrote down everything that was being said to him at that moment? No.
No, no, no. And I
And
don't think we expected him to take notes at that point. We'll get kind of into the notes as we go along. So we'll kind of
right.
circle back to that. But no, obviously, when you're in the middle of an emergency, you're not taking notes, right? And now we
And
have
on top of the fact, he
cam.
he was a relatively, new officer.
He was
And he
absolutely.
had
He
never
was.
seen
I mean, he
anything
was
like
just
that
in
before.
shock.
So he was in shock a little bit himself. And
Absolutely.
so people make a lot of him, telling Darren and Darlie, go help the baby, go help the baby. That's all he could do at that time, was to tell them what to do and still try to make sure an intruder does not come out on all of them, or run in the door behind him, or, so I mean, it was chaotic. I don't deny that. It was very chaotic. So,
Chaotic. He didn't know
um,
what he was walking into. He was a new police officer, and I mean, when you look at the crime scene photos, you guys don't, if you haven't seen them, you can go out and find them. If you really do want to look at them, send me a message and I'll link them to you. But also on Rich Prater, who's the PI that kind of works with my group, if you go watch his podcast and just look up Rich Prater, Prater, on YouTube, he has an episode where they go over the autopsy photos and the crime scene photos. Now Sasha, who's a fan of mine, who just requested the Santa Rosa case, which actually Arabia is kind of helping me do that. We're tag teaming the Darlie, and she's helping me work on some of my cases. But Sasha, you guys, if you go hit the screen like 1,000 times, this is what I do when I like lives. It will like 1,000 times, and that's what Sasha's telling people to do. So you can just sit there and tap the screen, and it helps both me and Arabia and our content, and for other people to see this video and join along in the discussion. So, at any rate, so also another thing that's interesting is people say, well, Waddell should have been down and given that kid CPR if he had time to stand there. We're talking that this was seconds, though. This was such a chaotic scene, you guys. This has gone on within 2 to 3 minutes. Why didn't the 911 operator give her the
okay,
instructions?
so believe it or not, and we're comparing a lot of things done almost 30 years ago to the way that they're done now.
Right.
It was not required for 911 dispatchers to be trained in CPR. And she just happened at that time not to be trained in CPR. She literally did not know how to tell Darlie to give CPR. I think most places now today, that is part of training for 911 dispatch, but that's why the 911 dispatcher did not tell Darlie what to do.
And talking about being not uniform with the legal system across the bill, like 911 operators, since I am a last responder and 911 calls us to say, hey, there's a body at this address, and we get the same type of information, like there's a suicide at 123 ABC Street. That's all we might get. I don't know what I'm walking into, but police and EMTs have already been there, so I feel relatively safe. You know what I mean? Walking into a crime scene.
Well, when the officer, and people have said this, I want to clarify this too. So some people say that they can hear on the 911 call the 911 dispatcher dispatching the call. She is dispatching that call to EMS. When she's talking about there is a stabbing, she's talking to EMS. When she dispatched it across to officers, that's not when she's dispatching it to officers. She's dispatching that. When she goes into detail on the 911 call, when you can hear her saying, 2 children, she is dispatching that to emergency responders, not to the
And
officers.
even in the 911 call, it's hard to understand because originally she thinks there's only one child. Then she started saying, no, babies. And she said, are there 2 children? And
Yes.
Darlie confirms, yeah, but, there's two children. So, it goes from being an unknown medical emergency, like we're saying, where you think, oh, somebody's had a heart attack in the middle of the night. Waddell walks into the scene. You're on what could have been, in some people's opinions, a triple homicide. You know what I mean?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, the officer was not aware of that. And in the 911 call, when the 911 call is being dispatched while she's on the phone talking to Darlie, she is dispatching that part where she's obtained more details to EMS, not to Officer Waddell, who is responding.
right.
So, And that's why I think this is a good idea. I think a lot of people truly don't actually know what happened. They just have an idea of what happened from things that they've seen or heard, or I think a lot of people make
Wrong
opinions
information
on this
can tell
case
the
based
truth.
upon not knowing particular parts of it or certain pieces of information.
And when we were talking last night or whatever, it's like you need medical knowledge to understand this case. You need legal knowledge. You need police and first responder knowledge.
Yeah,
You need
this case kind of falls across the board in every
It's
category.
very
So,
convoluted and there's so many different theories, and we're going to kind of get into that. So let's kind of go into the crime. So let's talk about Devin and Damon's wound. So one of the things we wanted to bring up, and this has been stated across my group, and I want to get your opinion on it. I know you've seen the crime scene photos. Is that when Devin was unalived, people believe that he was laying, he was sleeping. He was asleep and he was probably startled awake. And it's my belief that he sat up because there is vertical drippage. Now, I don't think he ever got up to walk around. Now, and I'm talking about Devin here, people, not Damon. We'll get to Damon next. Devin was the one that was DOA on the scene. He was treated by EMT Byford, who testified at the trial. He calls him DOA at the scene. Um, in testimony, Darren states that he did try to give Devin CPR. Devin was hit in the pulmonary artery. And just like the movies, it's not like he's just, fluids across the room. Like there's probably some pumping.
and he was also hit in the lung. And so he did more internal bleeding than external. I will say that. The blood kind of pooled because he was laying on his back. And so, because vital organs were hit, that is where the blood pool went to from those organs.
And that would be called livid.
So,
So he would have lividity across his back if he
pretty much, yeah.
unalived on his back because gravity pulls that
Yeah, and
blood
so when
down.
Darren tried to give him CPR, the blood that shot out was blood that was collected in the vital areas where he was hit. It wasn't like you said, it's not like the movies where it was just spraying all over the place. Because he laid down, his wounds, instead of bleeding outward, they bled internally.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
With gravity.
Like
And like
his
I said, in the mortician world, it's called lividity. And actually, even if somebody has been unalived in a situation for a few days, especially out here in the Texas heat, they'll turn black. Like I've walked into bodies where you can't even tell race because the lividity. I mean, the blood essentially without oxygen, necrosis and begins to decay. So
Yeah,
it's
and most people are familiar with like what your chest cavity is. Like his blood was pooling inside his chest cavity, so in every crevice,
it'd be
any space there
above the
was in there
heart,
for the blood to
but
leak into, that's where it went.
hit intercostally, which just means the spacing in between your ribs. So he was hit intercostally, like you said, in the pulmonary. So his injuries are mostly from here up. Damon's are a little bit different. So I do believe that Devin was sitting up. There's vertical drippage of, the red fluid that you can see coming down from where his upper wounds are. You can see vertical drippage down his shorts. So let's get into Damon. So what do you think? So we know Damon, he received because I know Damon also had one in the arm, which was maybe believed to be
Devin,
either his arm was laying kind of where the
it was a defensive wound.
yes,
He put his arm up as he
either
was
he was laying
being,
like this already
yes.
asleep or woke up like this and was hit here and then it just went kind of through his arm like that, or it was more defensive, whatever. So he does. So Devin does also have a gash in his arm from that kind of, I wouldn't call it secondary, but maybe his arm got caught when the perpetrator went in for that motion. So then Damon stabbed more on the backside. Um, it was believed is it believed he was sleeping more on his stomach? You guys can totally correct me.
Well, they're not sure, but it is believed that he was attacked twice.
twice in two different, and so he
In
has
two
some to
different
the
areas.
front and he has some to the back. Now there's been a rumor for a long time, and this has been repeated multiple times, that Damon's wounds went through and through, and it actually, that the weapon nicked the concrete. That's not true. Waddell has repeated it on an interview. Darren repeated it on the Lisa Gibson show. That's not true. Absolutely not one of the um, you know, unaliving markings went through and through. None of them were through and through.
It did break his ribs, though. It
Yes,
went through. It penetrated one of his ribs and broke another one. So
that's
there,
probably true. And you might be able to talk to this. A child of that age, their rib cage hasn't formed and calcified like an adult's. It's more
right,
crusty, right?
right. It would be more like the gristle of, like, you know what I'm saying.
Like a chicken or
It's
something.
bone, but it's not. It's not calcified like an adult's bone.
Right. And they haven't completely fused. Like the rib cage, I don't think fuses until you're in, until later adolescence, completely in the middle. And that's how they, and just so you guys know, on other cases when they go and date bodies and stuff and figure out how old somebody is, that's one of, there are several ways in anatomy that you can tell. Like if a woman's had a baby, her hip bone will be displaced, like that. It's open. If you've never had a child, it remains fused and closed. Same thing with the fusions in your skull. They fuse at a certain rate as you age. So that is how they go back and do aging, just for anybody that's curious on that topic. So at this point, we've got Waddell on the scene. Walling comes in right behind him. Walling basically immediately secures the scene and puts up yellow crime scene tape. At this point, Devin is DOA. Now, Waddell, Darlie, and Damon are all kind of in the foyer area of the entryway. And one of the nurses, their neighbor, who's named Karen Neal, she comes across the street. Darren had ran over there to get her. And I think
And
Waddell
also,
tells
Darren running over to get the neighbor, that is the person that the police officer confronts when he gets there with the gun. No intruder got past an officer. And Darren actually talks about that in a few interviews. So I've heard things about, oh, well, the intruder went right past the officer. No, that was Darren.
I've definitely heard that theory. It's not my theory. I've heard that theory, but right.
Darren was confronted with a gun by the police officer as he was attempting to go get the nurse from across the street. And then, so
now
yeah.
You've got the nurse who's named Karen. She's at the scene. They do let her come get Drake, the baby, because they have 3 kids. 2 of them were unalived downstairs. One of them was upstairs in his crib. He was 8 months old at the time. He was safe. So, and actually the police and the EMTs that are on the scene know Karen because she's like an emergency room nurse. Yes. So they know of her. They feel comfortable giving Drake to her. And then Terry Neal drives Darren to the hospital. Darlie herself is loaded into an ambulance, and so is Damon. Actually, I believe it's Kojak that picks up Damon. The EMT by the name of Kojak picks Damon up because the scene was so chaotic that he thought, I can give this child better care inside of the ambulance where there's not so much chaos going around. And so he, like we stated, we believe at the time of his unaliving, he was on his stomach, but when he's found, he's on his stomach laying in the foyer. And Darren states that the reason he did not attempt CPR on Damon was because he was afraid to turn him over. Which
yes, and he was correct in that.
He was correct in that because as soon as, and yes. I don't think there was any saving grace for Damon at that time anyways, but when Damon was flipped over by EMT Kojak.
Because if he didn't bleed to death laying there like that, he definitely would have started bleeding outward and bled to death if he would have been put on his back. So Darren did the right thing in that situation with that baby. Yes.
But like I said, so when the EMT scoops Damon up and flips him over, unfortunately, he does testify he sees the lights go out. I think that's literally the phrase he uses. He sees the lights go out in Damon's eyes. They do still put him in an ambulance and continue life-saving measures. They try and bring him back. I'm sure they pump adrenaline. They're pumping, they might be shocking him. And he,
And mind you, that is very hard to do with a child who had the injuries to his back. So,
and at that point, I mean, they're probably
anyone who criticizes that child could have been saved or disputes that child could have been saved.
No,
yeah.
No, unfortunately, yeah. I mean, the damage had been done, and if he had gotten there 2 minutes faster because Waddell cleared the scene faster, whatever, I don't think there was a case for Damon. I just don't. Where he was hit again, he had slower, like he wasn't hitting an artery, so he wasn't doing this quite as much, but his were bleeding, like you were stating, even with Devin.
His lung had been punctured.
Yeah.
His lung was punctured.
And so let's talk about the medical examiner. So she states that Devin probably was alive for about 5-ish minutes. And I hear 9.
The medical examiner doesn't actually give a timeline. Certain minutes are suggested to her, and she says maybe, but the ME doesn't actually give any type of timeline. She does say minutes.
Right. I mean, you can't because of the
Right.
variables. You don't.
Right.
Every injury is different.
And you got to remember, we don't know the timeline of the actual attack.
Right. We don't know what happened.
Where does the timeline? Right. You don't know how we know how it happened, but what I'm saying is, the timeline can start at different parts of the attack, because not all of those wounds would have been fatal if other ones didn't occur. So does the timeline start from the time the lung is punctured, or does it start from the time the arm is cut, or does it, and that is why she did not give a specific time, because if that lung wouldn't have been punctured, that timeline could have expanded. But say that was the first wound, which we don't know, that would shorten the timeline. Right. If it was the last wound, it would have elongated the timeline. And because he was attacked twice, right, we don't know in sequence how far apart the first attack was from the second attack.
The only way she would have been able to tell is if one of those woundings would have been post-mortem, because it bleeds, well, you don't bleed out the same, exactly. So we know that none of the children received anything post-mortem. Everything happened while...
And also, neither child was actually seen by a doctor because they were deceased.
Right. They're only seen by the medical examiner. So one of them is autopsied at Baylor, Damon, where he was taken, and Devin was taken to the medical examiner's office. And the autopsy reports are out there. Of course, I'll post them for anybody, but they're very easy to find. You can find everything on Darlie Facts. Thank you, Sasha. Thank you for the gift. Can you see all the comments and stuff, Arabia? I'm just curious.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Thank you, Sasha. She's the one, like I said, she's the one that requested our next case, which is going to be the Santa Rosa hitchhiker, which I talked about in my video yesterday. Just reminds me of the Hillside case in Kenneth Bianchi. Kennifer. I can't. Sorry, I'm trying to stay professional here. Okay. Let's go back to the Darlie case, though, because that's what we're here for today. So now... so the medical examiner, she can't put a timeline together. She can't state in which order the attack occurred. And she can't even confirm if it was the same weapon that created every single different wound track, right? Because some of them look, and this is due, and I want you to speak to this because
she never said it was different. She said she couldn't confirm
because of the
that weapon
in the body.
She couldn't confirm it was that weapon.
That's brought up is lines of languor. So why don't, since you're a nurse, you tell us.
You're cutting out on me.
Can you
hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you. Can you hear us? Well, maybe sometimes she has a bad connection. Let's just see if she comes back with us. She will. So anyways, one of the points that the medical examiner is trying to make, though, is that in the body, there's an anatomical word or phrase, lines of languor. And again, I can post a picture of this, but basically the body the way the muscular is, just like a butcher in a meat shop, uses those lines. And you can even see them in like chicken and stuff, the cutlets, like those are called, that's an anatomical term. It's called lines of Langer. And so at different parts in the body, the lines are closer together, spread out more apart, go in different directions depending on how the muscular skeletal structure is. It's different for everybody. Everybody has different lines of Langer. It depends on fat content, muscle content. It depends on a lot of different things. So, in that way, even when I did my experiments with the cow hearts, again, I can post pictures. I use the same, you know, um, weapon, and it creates two totally different wound tracks looking depending on what part of the musculature that it goes through. So even when like plastic surgeons go in to do surgeries and like a C-section or facelifts or cosmetic stuff, they're going to use those lines of Langer to their advantage because you can hide scarring in them. You can hide, it just makes for a neater, I would say, like cleanup or stitching, stericycle process when you're healing a wound. So that is a medical term, and that's one of the reasons that, in particular, that neither medical examiner, the one that worked on Devin or Damon, can't state for sure because there's so many variables with that, and so that can be really confusing to some people too. And one of the wounds on Damon, if you look at it, does look like one side is blunt and the other side is sharp, and on another wound, both sides look sharp. So she can't. I can't rule out a secondary weapon. Now, you can talk again in probabilities and possibilities. Is it possible? Yeah, it is possible that two weapons were used. It's possible that Darlie herself could have used two different weapons. It's possible that there could have been two intruders. So you can really, and that's another thing that makes this case so convoluted, is you can almost spin because things are talked about in possibilities and probabilities, and a lot of this case is
And
circumstantial.
there's a difference in possibility and probability. They're two totally different things.
Right.
It's possible that I can run this red light and have an accident. It's more probable that's going to happen if I run this red light and have an accident.
Right.
So there is a difference there.
Which you can't really statisticize the human body.
Right.
It's also different.
And you also, and when you're reading the transcripts, you have to pay attention to things like that. You have to pay attention to the verbiage that is used, because that's an important part of understanding a lot of things, is having an accurate comprehension of what is actually being said. When you read a sentence that said, is it possible, da, 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 that's not the same thing as asking, is it probable?
Right.
When you hear something being, when you read something saying the probability of, that's not the same thing as the possibility of. So comprehension is very important when you go into reading, especially from, like the legalities or the medical parts of this. You have to put things in the proper context of how they are being explained, because what one word means to you in a sentence could mean something else to an investigator or to a nurse or to a doctor. Do you get what I'm saying?
The word superficial in this case gets thrown around as one of those words.
Exactly. Superficial to the layman person is not superficial in medical terms. Superficial in medical terms is not the same thing as, like, it's different. And that's where I think a lot of people have a hard time following along and arguing over what this means or what this said. There really is a proper... Yeah, it's like when you're signing a legal document, the fine print.
That's why I'm a lawyer, because those words don't mean what they mean in the general vernacular.
Exactly.
And we just got a question. So did they recover any weapons? Yes. Okay. So what happened is, whether or not you think Darlie did it or not, Darlie states that she woke up and follows an intruder the way their house was laid out, through the family room, and you went through the laundry room to get to the garage, which is where they believe the intruder came from, if you believe that theory. So the murder weapon according to Darlie, the intruder left through the garage. She's walking slowly. We know this because it's only low velocity markings that are left, which just look like perfect circles. So we know she's not in a fast pace.
Yeah, she's not running.
She's not running. She's walking towards, and she states that he drops the weapon, which came from inside of the house. It came from the Routier's own butcher block. And it was found. So Darlie states that she bent over to pick it up in the laundry room. And when she bent over, that's when she realized that she had the wound to her neck because it gaped open and bled. And that was the first time she states that she realized that she was bleeding. And she picks up the weapon and she sets it on the edge of the bar. And that's where investigators find it. And 911 asks her, going back to the 911 tape again, people will state, well, why did she say twice that she picked up the murder weapon? Well, sorry, schmurder. We've got to watch.
She was being told not to touch anything. And in response is when she said, I've already picked up the knife.
Prompted by saying,
yes,
was, they, I think the 911 operator says something like, is there a weapon? And she said, oh my God, I picked it up. Oh my God, my fingerprints are on it, and people.
She wasn't volunteering that information, just, freely speaking. She wasn't volunteering that information. She was actually asked or told not to touch anything.
Yeah, she was told not to touch anything. And that's when she states, well, I already picked up the weapon. But I do want to hit on this before we pass by it and forget. Now, it is very common for intruders to take the weapon out of the own person's home because if you walk into anybody's kitchen that they're probably going to have a butcher block or a knife drawer in their kitchen. And if you go back, the biggest example that I use is Paul Holes, which he's like my mentor in the true crime world. If anybody knows him, he's the one that solved the Golden State Killer. But he's been a homicide detective in Sacramento, in that area, the San Francisco Bay Area. He's retired now, but we've seen him at CrimeCon a lot. And I think he's one of the leading experts in this stuff that we're talking about, forensics and crime scenes and stuff like that. Reminder, if you are in here, tap the screen. Tap, 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 tap. That way we can get a wider audience. Thank you, Sasha. Thank you. She's been awesome. She's giving us gifts and commenting. So thank you guys. And so the Golden State Killer, he did this. He would take, and he was a police officer. So he knew, thank you. Yay. Thank you, Sasha. So he knew that you didn't want to be caught. Because if let's say you're just strolling through the neighborhood out walking your dog at 2:00. Well, if you just committed that, if you just came from the Routier house, you don't want to be caught with that.
But you also have to keep this in mind. He did bring a weapon into the home because he had to cut the screen from the outside to get in. Don't forget that part. So
that's what I think. I think he had probably a pocket knife on him and slit the screen with the pocket knife.
It could have been, but.
And that's my theory. That's my theory.
Right. And he could have had a bigger knife. He could have, who knows? But it's those types of small details that also matter as much as the evidence in this case. And evidence is more than just something tangible. Evidence is more than, the towels that had the blood or the murder weapon. Evidence is more than that.
Sorry, watch your language, because we don't want to get
details, very small details, such as, it's possible to use somebody else's weapon inside their home to kill people. That's done. But he had to have some type of weapon to even come in.
Right.
Because he cut the screen, according to Darlie.
And this is my theory.
And the probability that somebody comes in with a weapon and then chooses somebody else's weapon is very small.
And that does throw a wrench in things. I will state that to bring your own weapon, but see, if he was caught with just a pocket knife on him that just had cut the screen, it wouldn't have shown up, with any kind of fluids or any kind of, red fluids on it. But I mean, like the Golden State Killer, Richard Ramirez, there's a lot of people that use weapons from inside the home.
Whoever did this probably was not a serial killer like them. So
that's the thing is, again, we're talking again probability versus
Right,
probability.
right,
And
right.
and the one thing I want to again mention before we go continue past the weapon is there was a deer hair found on the screen, and
Mhm.
they did not have deer. They did not have anything that had deer inside the house. They didn't have anything mounted. They didn't have anything that, rugs or tapestries or anything. Darren was not a hunter. They were, I mean, now Rowlett is out near a lake where there are deer.
Well, and Darlie also said multiple kids from the neighborhood would climb in and out of that window. That's why they kept it up.
And their
So
house
if you
was the
consider the
house.
number of kids that climbed in and out of the window to get
Very,
popsicles
very,
out of the garage, it could have been picked up from somebody else's home.
right.
It doesn't prove intruder.
And we were talking the other day, every crime scene is going to be contaminated
Contaminated.
because people don't live in a bubble. We don't live in a sterile home. I've got dog hair. My sister comes over, my brother, all my family comes over here. They could be bringing their own dog hair. They could be bringing, somebody could have dropped a hair on them from work and they come over right after work. And then some random person's hair's in my house. Jackpot, baby. Thank you, Sasha. You're awesome. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You guys are awesome. This is you know what? I think this is actually going really well. I think we're having a very good discussion. Are you guys enjoying this? Like if you're enjoying this, if you like this kind of content, us discussing the case like this. And I think this is a much healthier way than what Arabia was saying in the beginning, where TikTok, we can do clapback videos and you can post a comment, but with character limits and not being able to post photos and people not wanting to put content on their own pages to show people what they're talking about, it makes it hard to discuss true crime in
It's hard
general.
to have dialogue.
It's hard to have a dialogue, exactly.
Yeah. And then like a lot of I've been accused of being nasty, or it's because you only have so many words that you're allowed to type out. So you want to get to the point. It's
you
not
sound direct and you sound rude just because you're trying to meet a character limit.
so I just stick to what I'm saying and that's it. And some people, but yeah, it's definitely an interesting crime, and there's a lot of different opinions. And my thing is, if you're going to have an opinion in this case, I think you need to understand the case to have that opinion.
Right. And that's what we want is I have an opinion, you have an opinion, Danelle has her opinion. When we all talk about our opinions, I mean, Arabia's brought up some points to me where I thought, oh my God, I never thought about that. And I brought up maybe some things for you where you thought, oh, I never realized that. You know what I mean? And then it gives you a new angle to look at things through, and then you have to figure out how you put that into
Nine out of 10 people that I talk to about this case believe she's innocent. I'm always the minority opinion when I have this conversation. But yes, there are some things that people, and even without other people saying things, there's just things about this case that are like, what the,
Did Darlie and Darren talk about divorce that night? We're never going to know.
Exactly.
Was Darlie, like people, you have half people say, oh, Darlie was an amazing mother. Everybody loved her. You have the other half the people said her kids ran around the neighborhood. She yelled at him at the grocery store. Well, I can tell you, my kid misbehaves at the grocery store all the time. My kid, I don't have a kid quite as old as Devin and Damon were, but when he gets to be that age, that's the way our neighborhood is.
Well, I've raised several children, and I'd be a liar if I said I never cussed at any of them.
Exactly. I'm like, everybody's going to say that you're a bad mom at one point or another. And I've even come on here and talked about the mom shaming.
And who you are the type of mother you are when you have one child changes when you have three.
Right. Yeah.
I'm not the same mother to my 10-year-old that I was to my 26-year-old.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, I didn't, that's really not where I got my opinions from. It was a lot of other things, but let's get
into Darlie's wounds then. Since we talked about the boys, let's get into hers, because this is kind of where we do have quite a bit of a difference of opinion. I think her wounds are more serious. You do not. I'm a mortician. You're an ICU nurse. So this is very interesting. So basically everybody knows, I think, that Darlie was injured somewhat severely. I don't think she inflicted her own injuries. I don't think that, I do think she was attacked. I think the bruising on her arm is from the wound that's here, like we were talking about just with the boys, that blood has to go somewhere. It forms the bruises on the underside of her arms when she's laying in the hospital. That blood is going to pool in those areas. Um, I, you know, I don't care about the necklace being stuck in the track or not. To me, that doesn't really make a difference of how bad her injuries were, whether or not she did it to herself. So the necklace to me is a moot point. If you want to talk
Yeah,
about
me too.
it,
Yeah, the
it
necklace
really
really
doesn't
didn't have a
change
lot.
the
Yeah.
I mean, either, the injury occurred whether she was wearing that necklace or not, but it was kind of a
I
change.
think that's more of a legal. I think the necklace is more of a legal issue.
Yeah.
Just or it was used more in the legal than the medical.
Actually, you know what? I did all this work to pull up the pictures as we talked about it, and I'm not even doing it. Okay.
Yeah, I think the lawyers made more of an issue over the necklace than, the it just wasn't relevant in my opinion.
Well, and I think for some people it
And the
was
only reason it became relevant, I think, is because somewhere it was circulated that it saved her life and this and that and the other.
exactly. I was gonna say, I think for some people, it's more of a like
And
it
that's why I say,
maybe
if
it saved her
to
life.
have an opinion about the necklace, it would come from a medical aspect of it, not so much of a did she do it, did she not do it, because whether she did it or not, she had the necklace on when she did it. That doesn't change. And that's why I say it makes no difference personally to me.
Right. Gosh, I saved all of her freaking wounds, and now I don't. That's okay. Let me go pull them from my album. Okay, we're gonna show you guys the necklace that we're talking about. So while I find this, why don't you get into her sorry, why don't you go ahead and get into her exploratory surgery and talk about that?
Okay, so first of all, it's important to note, and this is what I'm talking about details. Her vitals were normal. She did not have high. Like her vitals were not alarming
Her
at
blood
all.
pressure was slightly low, but nothing to be seriously concerned about at the
But she
time.
was bleeding,
Right.
so that you know. But she was taken to Baylor because it's a trauma unit, or it's
Right.
a trauma hospital, and but that doesn't mean that that's because she was on death's doorstep. We have a trauma hospital here, U of L. Sometimes people are taken to U of L just because it's closer, but a trauma hospital treats more than serious injury. They're like any other hospital.
So here's this is
But
yeah,
she was taken to a trauma center.
yeah.
And
Let me pull up the one of her.
so as the nurses were examining her neck, her necklace fell off in the hands. The surgery was not to remove the necklace, like has also been circulated. The necklace was not embedded in her wound. But so she had a neck wound. The EMTs were not sure how serious it was. 2 children had just been deceased, and they took her to a trauma hospital because they thought that was the best place to take her, because nobody knew how serious her neck wound was.
Right.
And
that's why they
and
did
again, nobody
surgery.
everybody thought she was attacked, so nobody knew how serious it was on the inside. So when she got to the hospital, she had an exploratory surgery just to make sure that the structures of everything inside her neck were okay. And in that surgery, it was determined that the cut did come very close to her carotid artery. However, it did not nick, it did not cut, it did not sever, it did not puncture the carotid artery.
Covered the sheath. Do you agree with that?
Do what?
The sheath that surrounds the artery was
I
nicked.
have not read that.
Okay.
So I mean, it could be possible, but I'm just saying I have not
Talking
read that.
about of her in the hospital. So like here. I mean, obviously you guys can tell. You can see her neck wounds. I need
Yeah,
to know.
I have not read that. So
Okay.
I can't confirm or deny that that did happen. But what the doctor did was he did an exploratory surgery to see the extent of the injury. They did not even stitch it back up. They let it heal from the inside out. And so that's why it looks also as bad as what it is, because it is a gaping wound that they left gaping. So, but that was the extent of the surgery, and the surgeon testified that the whole thing, from beginning to end, including paperwork, uh, conversation, and everything, was 2 hours. Now, Darlie was placed in the ICU uh, on a procedure that the doctor said, had it been anything else, or had the attacker been caught, he would have sent Darlie home the same night of the surgery. So it was not some life-saving, she's on death's doorstep, oh my God, look at her in the ICU. It was a formulated plan to place her in the ICU for her own safety, and that's why she was kept in the hospital. In the ICU, it is required that you have an IV, it is required that you have oxygen, and it's required that you have a couple of other pieces of equipment as protocol.
Like an IV place.
But people look at that picture and people make a lot of that picture, like, oh my God, she was damn near dead. She was not. She was not. And you got to remember, she also said she was running back and forth in her house, grabbing towels multiple times to try to save her children. So at no point was she ever rendered immobile because of these injuries. She was not placed in the ICU because she was in critical care. It did not nick, cut, puncture, or anything the carotid artery. Her vitals were normal, even when EMS arrived. So the truth is, this woman did not damn near die. That is not the
She had not
truth.
received any, like, say they were out in the middle of the woods and she did not have any she did not receive any medical care. Do you think she could have, unalived from these injuries? If
No,
she, you think
no.
you think her body would have clotted on its own?
Oh, well, that part
Like if she had
is
received
that.
nothing, like just say, like, in just theoretically, if she
Well,
received
that's what I'm saying. That's hard for me to answer, because that goes outside the scope of the information that is available.
yeah.
As far as now, it was her sister that said her hemoglobin had dropped, and that she suffered a mass blood loss. I have not seen that reflected in a medical record.
Okay, perfect.
If that is the case, yes, she probably could have at some point bled to death. Yes.
I'll send you her hemoglobin and hematocrit levels. I have all that.
Yes. And so what I said about the bruising was,
Right.
if she did in fact suffer a blood loss, and if it was a loss that made her hemoglobin drop critically low, in that event, you're going to bruise a lot easier and a lot faster, because your blood is not clotting when your hemoglobin levels are very low. And kind of like you said, there's nothing to stop the blood from pooling
Can
in
you
certain areas when it's not clotting.
between your hemoglobin and your hematocrit?
You are cutting in and out.
Um, I asked if you can you hear me? Okay, sometimes our internet cuts out. Let's move on to another picture. I'm going to pull up the bruises while we get Arabia back on. But again, this is what we're saying. It's almost like you need legal and a lot of medical information to really dive into this case to make a critical theory or a critical decision on what you think. And that's why we're doing this, you guys. And that's why we want a safe space for people to talk about this case where there isn't, harassment or rudeness or stuff going on, because there's been plenty of times where that has been the case. Okay, I'm going to pull up this picture. Okay, so this one, and I think this is actually, I didn't mean to pull this one. I think this is the doctored one. So there was a book called Media Tried, Justice Denied that's about the Darlie Routier case. And they took contrasted pictures and they photoshopped them just to show some of the bruising, but it makes some of it look worse. And some of this you can't tell if it's shadows or if it's actually like bruising. And I didn't mean to pull this picture. I had the original one, but when I go to the next one, it'll be so this one has been like contrasted, but this is the mark that we talked about that she received to her arm. Okay, let me show you another picture of some bruising. So those two pictures were taken while she was at Baylor. The next,
and what I was saying is, you know, if she had a very low hemoglobin level, she's going to bruise a lot more easily and a lot more severely than if her blood was clotting. And like you said, in dead people, had the blood kind of pull, I think y'all call that lividity or whatever, to one area. It's the same thing when your blood doesn't clot. And where she was in the hospital bed, you know, probably not using that arm because it also had a wound to it. I think a lot of that bruising was more due to a medical reason other than being attacked. That's my personal opinion. And that's just going based off of the family, you know, saying that she suffered the blood. And actually, I think Danelle did post where it showed that her hemoglobin was relatively low. And I think that's why I even started to say what I said about the bruising. But anyway, yes, she would have bruised a lot more severely and a whole lot easier in a situation with a mass blood loss and a very low hemoglobin. So you have to keep that in mind too when you're looking at these bruises saying, oh my God, you know, they look terrible. I don't deny that. But I think there's more of a medical reason why those bruises look so bad compared to her being attacked. And there's more to that reasoning that I will get into as we get further along and start to discuss different things that are more relevant that we're not discussing in this live. So just hold on to that information.
Right, I was gonna say we're gonna like circle back we're gonna.
And hold on, I'm gonna lose you again. I'm actually driving, so hold on. I'm gonna lose. Like I can. If I cut out, I'll be right back. That's what I mean.
No worries.
But I'm crossing a bridge and I'm definitely going to lose my signal until I get across it.
Okay. Okay, let me see if there's any other pictures on a pull up. So this is the family room. We'll talk about this. So this is the room as it stood before the crime. So if you're not familiar with this scene, this couch over here and this where the lamp is, I believe is considered the west end, and this is the east end. Now they had a TV over here that's not shown right here in this picture. So Darlie was laying on this couch and her head was actually on the lamp side. She was facing away from the TV because she was trying to, I believe, nurse, breastfeed the baby, feed the baby, and she just didn't. She was trying to get some rest, so she was facing actually this way. So her head would have been down by the lamp. Her feet would have been more towards me. The TV would have been over here by the fireplace. Damon was laying right here next to her, like this, parallel to the couch. Devin was laying over here in this area, kind of right in front of the TV. Like his pallet was set up to the TV. So then whenever we get into crime scene photos, and this will probably be in the next episode, but I just wanted to show you guys what this room looks like. Now there is a coffee table back behind this sofa. Okay, you guys, that's where 85J is found. That's the fingerprint that we'll get into later. This lamp was knocked over. These flowers were off the table, and this piece of glass fell off the table. Was off. This is a rock base. The glass fell off the table. The flowers fell over. The lamp shade had fallen down the pole. There is DNA. I mean, this room, when you go look at the crime scene photos, looks like a whole different room. You don't even see the room because the whole room looks red because of the nature of the crime. But so Devin laid right here, and that's where he was DOA. And it's believed that Damon woke up pushed on Darlie's shoulder. This is Darlie's testimony. Pushed on her shoulder. She woke up, and that's when she saw the intruder. And then she walked this way, and it would be towards me that she'd walk towards the kitchen. Now, then Damon walks around between the couch and the coffee table. I believe if you followed the DNA map, and the foyer would have been over in this area, and that's where he's found. So he got up, and Darlie says that he kind of followed her towards the kitchen, and she said, "Hold on, honey, don't follow me," or whatever. And then we don't really know.
I don't remember her testifying and her saying that.
Okay, I'll find it for you.
Yes, please do.
I will.
Because that's one of the discrepancies that I argue all the time. And I don't remember hearing her say, "Hold on, honey, don't follow me." I don't remember that being in her testimony.
But I think she said, like, "Hold on, honey, like, stay back," or, I don't think.
Because, one of the reasons I have my own theories that differ from yours is if you look at the blood pattern, that child did not follow her into the kitchen where she said he followed her.
And I don't think he followed her very far. Like I said, he didn't really get past this area right here.
Right. Okay.
Right. Okay. Does that make sense?
He went over to the other side where she went straight.
Found right under this gold pillow. There's a handprint found.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So we agree on that.
He was sleeping in front of the couch, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. All right.
He was parallel right here. He was parallel
between the couch and the coffee table, right?
And then and then Devin was laying in front of vertically or to the side, more in front. So when Darren comes,
so we're talking about the same baby at this point, right?
Yes,
the one that moved.
When Darren comes down the stairs, he immediately sees that the coffee table's off. He thought the coffee table had accidentally fallen off onto Devin.
Yes,
that's what he states. Yes. And that's why Darlie's screaming, and that's why there's blood in that area. Little does he realize what has actually happened, and that both of his kids have not only been injured, but are most likely not going to make it, Right. Okay, but let's go back to the blood and the bruising really fast. I kind of pulled up this crime scene photo while you crossed the bridge. But what is the difference between a hematocrit and a hemoglobin? And another question that I've had somebody ask me is, if you're pushed fluids like through an IV, like if you get, a banana bag or saline or whatever, is that going to affect your hematocrit or your hemoglobin levels at the end of the day? Can you get into that? Oh no, we lost her again. Okay. Well, when she gets back on, we'll do that. We'll see. She might not be, and we're literally 15 minutes away from our 90-minute episode. So if we lost Arabia, she'll be back with me next time. Let me guys know. Oh, you're here. Okay, perfect. I was going to tell you, did you hear my question?
Okay, the hematocrit is the volume.
Okay.
It's the volume of your blood. And
how much blood is it? And then I'm going to speak, and she can correct me. Hematocrit is how many red blood cells are within that volume. So they can test both. Did you hear me? So the hematocrit is actually how many red blood cells are inside of that blood volume.
I think what you said is correct. Say it again. I'm so sorry. The next time we do this, I'll be in a better area.
That's okay. You're fine. Me and Danelle cut out all the time. Honestly, TikTok is a mess, you guys. It's hard to do. Everybody knows. So hemoglobin is the volume of blood inside your body, but hematocrit is how many red blood cells are within that volume.
Exactly.
So when one goes down, if you lose blood, you're also going to lose red blood cells, right? So they kind of follow each other, but it's just like blood pressure. It's like your
hemoglobin is a little bit more important than your hematocrit.
Bottom number, you know what I mean?
Your hemoglobin is just a little bit more important than your hematocrit.
because it basically, the more blood you have in your body, then the more red
Right.
blood cells you're going to have. So my second question to you, which has been a question that's been asked to me that I don't feel like I have the expertise to answer. If you're pushed saline, like you said, normally if you're in the ICU, they're going to be pushing fluids, they're going to be pushing saline. Would that at the end of the day affect your hematocrit or hemoglobin level?
No.
No, no, because a lot of people have theorized that the reason her hematocrit and hemoglobin went down was not due to blood loss, was but rather from the fluids that they pushed. That's not correct.
No.
No. Okay. Good. Well, we've basically gotten let's end on the popcorn and then we'll hit our 90 minutes and we'll be back next week with you
Well,
guys.
I'm going to humble myself and say I was wrong on the popcorn.
That's okay because you know what? It's been brought up at other places.
I did not realize that they actually did find a bowl of the popcorn.
So
I
Darlie had stated that no popcorn was ever found in the boys' stomach contents. So Darlie had made like a chicken rice soup or something that night. Okay, they found chicken, rice, and veggies or whatever. But then, so she says that night, as the kids are laying down there, see, and that's the thing is that we can help each other out. There, I don't know everything. You almost can't. This is 30 years of information, you guys. So it's really a lot. Let me find is it this one that has the popcorn? Stop it. Don't say it. Don't say it. Yes. Oh, you can't say that. Okay, but here you can see where they collected the bowl of popcorn. Okay, but one of the things is people have said, well, popcorn has never been found. The medical examiner never stated she found popcorn. Again, this is like the necklace. It's a mute point. She could have popped popcorn and the kids could have already fallen asleep. You know how many times my kid said, Mom, go make me a sandwich or make me this, and I bring it to him and he don't eat it. You know what I mean? Again, it's a mute point. Right. Now, this is what we were talking about down here. We thought, is this is this Mugs? No, me. It was me. Because look, it says feather powder. No, this was more like adult toys, you guys. So it says there's edible, and you know what? That's fine. If you search any adult house in America, I'm okay with you finding adult toys. If that had been what I thought it was, right, right, exactly. That's again, that's not even for us to judge. We're not judging her for that, okay? We're judging her for the crime that the state of Texas committed her for. Um, so I don't care about any of that. Even down here, you'll see that there's um, if you look through all these papers, all of the evidence logs, you'll see that there are MJ roaches. Again, you know what? They're adults. If that's what they did when their kids fell asleep, I'm not going to judge them for that. Now, if there was a C pipe, I'd have a little bit more reservation. I'd be a little bit more like, because your kid getting a hold of a white powder is different than them getting a hold of you know, a something or a butt of a cigarette or, something like that. Like it does make a difference in my opinion, of course, because there has been theories about this crime. It is. And that's why I just could say it's a moot point. I know every mom has yelled at her kids. Every mom has locked their kids out and said, go play outside, especially in the 90s where we all played outside and everything was, safe. Nice neighborhood. When all the parents knew the kids, yeah, exactly. And then, somebody said, oh, our kids were down playing at this construction site. We used to go play down, me and my sister used to go play down at the construction site and jump our bikes off of it and shit. Like, we did crazy shit back then. Because I actually am almost down damn near to the same age as Devin. So I grew up in the same area, and I grew up in Carrollton, which is the Dallas area, only about 30 minutes away. They're running around with other kids in the neighborhood where parents were watching them. Exactly, exactly. Yeah, there was like kids from ages 11 and 12 down to like 4 and 5 that all ran around. Parents had, called, oh, hey, all the bikes are over at your house. Or Devin and Damon down there yet with them. And we'll finish the last thing talking about this. Um, what do you think about Helena's testimony about Drake like falling out of his high chair and that she was trying to smother him or something? Have you kind of ever read into that, or do you know much about that piece of good? I'm like, there's some people that call me a great mom. There's other people that don't agree. Everybody parents differently. Oh, they're saying they can't hear you, Arabia. They can't hear you. I don't know, but why don't we're basically at our time limit. I mean, we have 10 minutes left, so let's just kind of wrap it up. And if they can hear you, they can hear you, but we won't talk about anything crazy. So this time we kind of talked about a little bit about our differences of opinions. You guys got to know Arabia. So we'll start doing this on on a Saturday or one day a week or every other week or something. Normally, me and Danelle have missed the past 2 Sundays just due to family stuff, and we had to evacuate for the fires here in Texas. So I was off TikTok. You guys know that for a minute, but we'll try and do this, and we'll just go through the case chronologically because that's something else a lot of people don't do. They start like at the trial over here, or they start at the 911. It's like and I do want to come back to Helena and Barb and the black car and some stuff that did happen leading up to this crime, phone calls, maybe some stuff that Darren was involved in. Right. So let's talk about that kind of next. Let's put all the characters into place because there are a lot of characters in this story. We'll get the family introduced, get characters introduced, and then we'll go from there into the trial. Because all those people are going to end up testifying and stuff. Yeah. Yeah. Right. And you help me with the whole arrest indictment thing, and we'll get into that next time because that is important. There's a lot of people that have questioned her habeas corpus rights and her indictment and her arrest warrant, and so we'll get into that next time as we go. And actually, tomorrow, me and Danelle are talking about her from trial to, um, and so I hope that you join. I hope you can join us and at least. Yes. So why don't we kind of end it here? You guys seem to really like this. Our fans really seem to like this. I think that Arabia, she's a very smart woman. Like I said, she's been through her own legal stuff with her own family. I mean, she's an ICU nurse. She's a critical care nurse. She knows the medical. Yes, we do have to go now. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I wish I could do this all day, every day, but I do have Janelle, and she does no. And you and Danelle are neutral. Like you guys are not on. You guys talk, yeah. And that's what we're saying. Danelle's not under the microscope here, people. We're talking about the Darlie Routier case, not the Danelle Fugate case. Yeah. Yeah. No, you need, I mean, we had legal experts, medical experts. Yeah, like we had a whole crew of people that were, I mean, I had a consultant out of the Innocence Project and somebody that walked me through how, grand juries work and stuff because like you said, it's not like you see on the movies. It's not like that, you guys, really, in real life. It's messy, it's bureaucratic, it's red tape, it's money, it's resources, it's the state. Yes. It's like the umbrella. Right. And that's why when we talk about this case, it's not just important for Darlie. And I think a lot of times people say the kids get overlooked. If Devin and Damon could change the legal system to make it a more fair and just legal system, then I feel like there will be justice for Devin and Damon. And that's where I feel like the justice will come from. So somebody said, "Do you know what time tomorrow?" Yeah, normally me and Danelle do like 6 or 7 around this time, but like I did today, if you don't follow me, everybody go follow Arabia so she can get her follows and do our lives like me and Danelle do, where we can see her face and hear her better. And then so go follow her. Me and Danelle, we try for 6. We're all real bad at timekeeping. We all have a lot of going on, you guys. So I'll put a countdown. Me and Danelle will either do 6 or 7 o'clock tomorrow, and Arabia will join us for that. And so on Danelle's side, she gets millions of questions. Of course, on my side, I don't get as many, but we did put a moderator in place for Danelle so that questions can be put to the top, and people relevant good questions can be answered. Now, the experiments that I did, I had them all on a TikTok channel and it got taken down, it got banned. I don't think it was the content. I think it was the people that were on that channel that got it banned. If you guys want me to repost some of those videos, today I'll at least put the one up of the example of the lines of linger. I'll post some pictures on to my channel after we get off this call. Yeah, but you agree. Okay, thank you. Okay. So, and I'll post pictures. Like I have a really good that I got out of one of my anatomy books of lines of linger, and I'll post pictures of some of the markings into the cow hearts. But lots of people got real mad over that, you guys. And I asked the family. I asked Danelle if I could do that, and she wanted me to. So I just want you guys to know it wasn't disrespect on that side. There were other people that just maybe didn't understand the concept or like the reasoning behind it. And maybe I came in hot and heavy, but that's just kind of who I am. you either you either like me or you don't. It's like I'm not everyone's favorite cup of tea, and that's fine. And neither was Darlie. But we're trying to show a good space where people can have differing opinions. Yeah. I mean, I think I'm a rocket scientist, but I think the only thing I really have, like, I'm a really good expert about the Real Housewives. Like, expert in, like I said, in death. but I don't work on the living. I don't work in the ICU. So hemoglobin and hemoglobin and all that stuff. Yeah, I learned about it in school 10 years ago, but when I did my pre-med studies, but I don't use that in my everyday life. You know, I use more anatomical, more little. And my perception of the same, me and you could spend this, literally this live we did tonight. I could take away a totally different perception than what Arabia takes away, than what Norma takes away, than what Debbie or any of my fans, Sasha takes away. Every single one of us could have a different perception of how this live went tonight. And that's what we're saying. There's probabilities and possibilities and statistics, and it could be, and she said, he said, da 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 da. Be simple. No, you to decide. Yeah, exactly. And this is a very theorized case, and everybody thinks that their theory is right. It's just like religion. We all said we have kids. We want to show our kids how to get along on the internet because this is a really important topic. Bullying in today's society is a big deal. And us as adults doing it, no, guys, come on. Like, let Reagan's still alive. Like she still has a kid out there. She still has a sister and a mother and people that, despite even if she did do this, that still probably would love her. And she still is a human. And no. And I have fans that follow it for both, and that's what we're saying. Is we just want to give you guys like a more subjective, chronological, factual things that are pulled from testimony, things that are pulled from the record, from the medical record, you know. So everybody said that we did a really good job. Loved how we stayed on topic. Still having a problem hearing you, but let's everybody go follow Arabia so that we can get her to 1,000 followers, so we don't have to worry about not being able to see or hear her. That way she can be up front and center with us. So go follow her, and we will. I'll see you guys tomorrow at 6. We'll both be there. We'll both see you guys tomorrow at 6 or 7. I'll confirm with Danelle, and I'll put another countdown on my TikTok tomorrow morning. Okay, you guys, and I'll go post the pictures of the stuff that we talked about today. All right. Perfect. And people are saying that they're sending requests your way. Good night. You guys have an excellent Saturday night, and we will see you tomorrow. Again, my name is Sully. You can follow me here. You can also catch me on my podcast, Kitchen Table Research, which is available on all platforms. And if you want to subscribe, like Sasha, she is a subscriber of mine. She just recommended the hitchhiker case out of Santa Rosa, I believe. The Santa Rosa hitchhiker. And so instead of her case going down to the bottom of the fan request, hers went all the way to the top. And so instead of me covering the Peggy McGuire case first, I will cover that case in front of it. So that's part of your subscription membership. You also get a free Kitchen Table Research bumper sticker. I'll show you guys what they look like. And it has our QR code on it. Arabia, I'll send you one, of course, girly. But this, of course, you can, get our QR code right off of there, Kitchen Table Research. And you can follow us there and see us tomorrow. And like I said, I think that's it. Yeah, you get a free bumper sticker, a shout out, and your case request gets pushed up to the front of the line if you want to be a subscriber for $2.99 a month. So that's up to you guys. But at any rate, I hope to see everyone back tomorrow. You guys have a safe Saturday evening. And just love all my fans. Thank you guys for the support. Thank you guys for allowing Arabia to come in and talk with us tonight. This was really special and enjoyable for me. So I hope that it was Santa Rosa. I know there's so many Santas in the California area. So love you guys. You have a wonderful evening, and I will be back with you tomorrow. Bye.